Hey everybody, it's David, and I'm coming to you from my house because this video is not going to be about cats, it's going to be about locks. I've been meaning and talking about resuming making videos related to picking locks, which is one of my many hobbies, and I haven't gotten around to it, and I figured, well, this weekend I might as well take a step in the right direction to reintroduce me, the lockpicking Meower. Meow! So, in this video, I will pick some locks, hopefully, successfully, but I'd also like to talk about my favorite worst lock manufacturer. And I'm sure the experienced lock pickers will know what's coming. My favorite worst manufacturer is the boys with the blue stripe, Masterlock. Now, let me just be clear. Masterlock is not a high-security lock manufacturer, and I would argue that they have never been a high-security lock manufacturer, and in many applications, their locks are an abjectly terrible choice, and many of their locks are abjectly terrible. The 141 springs to mind immediately as an awful lock that has no use case in the real world, in my opinion. That being said, they make a ton of really cool locks that not a whole lot of people know of, either because they're rare, they're discontinued, or just people aren't that into locks, and people are, going to be excited by the increasing popularity of Locksport and be like, oh, you are using a Masterlock number 3. It can be opened with a Masterlock. For the record, this won't happen with these two Masterlocks, but that's a thing that can happen. And while it's true, Masterlock is very deserving of most of the ridicule that it gets from the Locksport community. And I say this as a Locksporter and a fan of Masterlock. Yeah, they make a lot of crap. They really do. This is the first number 3 that I ever got, as I mentioned. This is some crappy short hook. And I actually haven't even touched this lock in a really long time, so I can't even feel it. But it's okay, because we're going to get in any second now. And, just to speak for the other Master number 3, this is actually a really cool one. I found it by the side of the road, and it's much older. It's actually from when they still used to make these locks in the USA. And I will say, the locks made in America are better than the locks made in not America, but there are so precious few Master locks these days that are actually made in the States that, yeah, it's a shame. Like I said, these are not good locks, but they are fun, and I think this one is cool just as a historical piece. But I want to discuss Master locks that don't suck. Well, some of them might have very poor pick resistance, but I think all of them, to some degree, are very interesting. So let's get started with something very simple that only the Locksporters will find interesting. It's this Masterlock 575. Master still makes the 575, but what's interesting is you'll notice the lock is open, there's no key in the lock, and the lock is in a locked state. Now, for those of you who are actually good Locksporters, you know how rare it is to see this because the 575 is key retaining and has a dead core. I should not be able to return the key or the core to the neutral position with the lock still open, and yet I can because this is a very weird 575. Continuing, we've got this one, which is the number 28, because Masterlock back in the day decided, you know what would be a great idea? We make these laminated locks. Let's make a laminated brass lock that is also rekeyable. So this one has an American lock keyway, a very thick shackle, and I happen to think it's beautiful. And, of course, because you can't have anything nice in this life, it's discontinued, because most cool Masterlocks are discontinued. Speaking of cool Masterlocks that are discontinued, let's go to the biggest, coolest Masterlock that is discontinued, and that's this monstrosity, the 19. This is probably the highest security Masterlock body ever made, I would say. Certainly the highest security laminated lock body ever made. It is massive, and to give you an idea of how massive it is, here it is next to the number 3 that we picked earlier. I don't have a key for the 3, sorry. The roadside find. And this is a legitimately good lock, but it's discontinued. Masterlock. Here's another lock made for a very specific use case. This is the 101. It's also a laminated lock. It's also a laminated steel lock. It's quite wide. It's designed specifically to lock up refrigerator doors that are in commercial settings, and it is also rekeyable. And this one, assembly status, I'm not sure. I believe they were discontinued, but they're certainly very easy to find still, and at very low prices as well. Now, speaking of the 19 and the 101, let's combine the two and have a massive laminated rekeyable lock. This is the 29. It's not as big as the 19. This takes a full-size kick cylinder, and in the case of this lock, uses an M-heart. By the way, all that noise is my cats running around and playing upstairs. Sorry about that. I am the lockpicking Meower after all. Continuing. We all know Master's Pro Series. That's actually some of the best locks that Master makes. What you might not know is that in the mid-noughties, they actually tried to expand their Pro Series locks to include non-Pro Series cores in Pro Series bodies. So this is the Masterlock number 996, and it uses the exact same body as the Pro Series 6840, but it uses a different keyway. In this case, it uses the 81M4 keyway. And also, unlike the Pro Series, spring shackle, very, very satisfying. And also, unlike the Pro Series, no Pro Series marking. It just says Master front, Master back, and on the bottom it says 996. And holy crap, my cats are going crazy. On the same subject as the 996, there's also the 991, which is the same concept. Instead of a 6840, it's a 7040, and also just like the 996, spring shackle and chrome body, very shiny. Very demure, very sexy. Continuing onwards to more cool Master Locks. One of my favorite series of Master Locks used to be the 570, 575, 576, and 532 series, which all used the same 5-pin core. That was either mostly standard pins or chock full of spools until Master started ruining things. But the coolest iteration of that same 5-pin core, in my opinion, is this, the 533, which is got a high shackle guard, and I love high shackle padlocks. And while it's not a high security solution, it's not impossible to pick. In fact, it's not difficult. It's probably about an orange belt level on the LPU scale. It's extremely competent. It's got a high shackle to prevent against cutting. It's got a solid steel body, which is built tough. And even the core, although it's not rekeyable, the core actually has anti-drill steel rods in it to prevent people drilling out the core. That's rare, especially at this price point, which it would have been in the $20 range. Unfortunately, this lock has been discontinued. You can't have anything nice if you love Masterlock. And I've got two more cool product lines that I'd like to demonstrate, and then we'll pick our final lock, and I'll say goodbye to you, and next week we'll actually just have a discussion, an in-depth discussion on some of these cool Master Locks. But the last ones I'd like to show you are this, the 534, this, the 536, this empty space where the 535 used to be, but don't worry, I've got one upstairs, and this, the 572. Now, these are all rekeyable locks. They're all discontinued, unfortunately, and they're all very cool. And I don't know a whole lot about them, to be honest with you, because there's just not a whole lot of information on them. But what I can tell you is that they all use American Lock date designations, and they all are extremely similar to American Lock military products, and they all use an American Lock style actuator in their bodies. So my belief is that these all were made in the American Lock factory shortly after the merger, and these are military bodies. And the reason I say that they're military bodies is because they can only take a 5-pin core, not the full-size 6-pin American or Masterlock core. And standard from the factory, because Masterlock is going to Masterlock, and in these very nice bodies, they're going to give you absolute crap, was a 4-pin core, the same as you found in this. But they're rekeyable, and they can take a 5-pin core. So that's all right. So, what did we do? Well, in the 536, we put a restricted keyway and obviously lots of security pins and a key retaining actuator. In the 534, I put a paracentric 17 keyway. That's not it. That's a paracentric 17 keyway, pardon me. And this is basically an American 5260 by any other words. And finally, in the case of the 572, I actually put a 5-pin American Lock government cylinder in it with American Lock pins. So we've got an American 5570 that's actually a Masterlock. These are all really cool locks. Every single one I have just demonstrated is discontinued because Masterlock won't let you have anything nice. Speaking of which, let's go to our last lock, and this is going to be the one we're really going to pick because I'd like to discuss it because it's quite good actually. And pardon me while I grab my picks out of my case that I wanted to use for this specifically. But I want to actually discuss these two cute boys. This is the Masterlock Fusion series. These are specifically the model 192. They're about the same size as the Master number 3, roughly, but they have a front access keyway with a much smaller, much more power-centric keyway, and they got spools in them. So, of course, they're discontinued. Now, when I look at this lock, I see a lot of promise and a lot of problems. I see a plastic body, which gives me cause for pause if I didn't know that this body is just protecting the inner body. What gives me cause for pause, nevertheless, is that I think that the body itself is made of zinc, which has a fairly low melting temperature and is just not a very strong material. It would have been much better if it were made out of steel. And the keyway is from the Masterlock number 7, not the standard W1 keyway like this one. And so it's much, much tighter, much more power-centric. You can't really get a turning tool, actually, in the top because it doesn't really want to grab on, although it did grab on now. But it's probably going to eject the Yep, there it goes. But if we switch to bottom, these locks are actually a pretty fun pick because, like I said, they have spools, they have a fairly tight keyway, and they fall into a nice full set. Now, they're not difficult, although I'm making this one look much more difficult than it is because I'm not a very good on-camera picker. All right, there's my full set, and there's one open, and then for Master Fusion number 2, this one's probably going to go super quick, right? The first one takes forever, and the second one takes no time at all. Like I said, these locks are not hard to pick, especially if you've been doing it for any appreciable amount of time. But they're a lot more challenging than stuff like this. They're quite cute looking. They use a ball-bearing locking mechanism, which is not shimmable. It cannot be opened. You are using a Masterlock. It can be opened with a Masterlock style because ball bearings are not vulnerable to friendly fire in that regard. And I'd also like to point this out. They're key retaining. You can't turn it back to the unlocked position or remove the key without locking it. These would have been such good locker locks to keep in production. So much better than the 1500 combination lock or the 3 or the 140 or the 141 or any other common form of locker lock. This would have been so much better, especially because, and if anybody who goes to school knows, if you forget, if your lock is going to be opened by somebody who isn't you, chances are they're going to bolt cutter it. This has a very high shackle guard, and when it's in place on a hasp, I would say there's precious little place to cut. This is a good feature to have, but of course, like I said, if it's nice, Masterlock won't let you have it. And yet I love Masterlock. Why is that? I don't know. Am I a glutton for punishment, perhaps? I hope not. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed me reintroducing myself as a lockpicker and touring some of my cool, weird Masterlocks. And next week we'll be picking another one of these and gutting it as well, so you could see what it comes with standard and what it comes with now that I've finagled with it. Anyways, have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.